Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man established our web-slinging dope with charm, action, and because it's Sam Raimi, amazingly campy jump scares.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
Whoa, it's 2002. You may know or like later takes on Peter Parker better, but trust me, most of what you love about Spider-Man has its DNA rooted in this film. And I'm gonna break down this full movie scene by scene for all the hidden details and interesting Easter eggs that you might have missed. I definitely found some new stuff, so let's do this. Let's go back to the real beginning. The opening credits dissolve into an actual spiderweb. Raimi hid spiderwebs and pest control jokes throughout this movie. Peter's bedroom wallpaper, the sign outside he and Harry's apartment in New York, a Terminix pest control sign in Times Square. His whole world is a spiderweb, and there are a lot of things trying to exterminate him. Mary Jane Watson makes the school bus driver stop for Peter. Later, when she gets a ride from friends, there's no one to stop the bus, so Peter misses it, implying that MJ has to do this for him every day. His bully, Flash Thompson, is played by a young Joe Manganiello. And I say young, despite all of these actors in their 20s, playing teenagers. It's just the way it was done then.
How do you do, fellow kids?
And this can't sit here nerdy girl was confirmed to be Liz Allen, a classmate and love interest of Peter Parker in the comics. On the field trip, Peter geeks out.
Some spiders change colors to blend into their environment.
Spiders in the
It's a defense mechanism.
Harry rolls his eyes out, but then steals.
Spiders can change their color to blend into their environment.
Really?
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism.
Actually, it's interesting that colors come up because the color palette is central to this film. Peter is often shown in red and blue. Meanwhile, the color green represents a threat, kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West. Green is everywhere. The floors and the vapor at Oscorp, their graduation, the evil dish, evil candles, evil wall paint lurking behind Uncle Ben before he croaks. Peter bleeds through his green shirt at Thanksgiving while Norman wears Peter's colors, the hero and the villain in a mutual masquerade after their collision. But this early line about color camouflage establishes a reason to all this. See, normally green is a natural camouflage shade. It's an earth tone, traditionally symbolizing goodness, heroism. But in a bustling urban jungle like New York, you're less likely to see green, well, outside of Central Park, than you are colors like the flashing red and blue of emergency lights. That is the natural camouflage Peter uses to blend into his city surroundings as an emergency responder. And there's a deeper significance to the symbolism that we'll get to at the end of this breakdown. The genetically modified spiders list all of Peter's superpowers that'll later have.
Arachnids from all three groups possess varying strength to jump to catch its prey. It spins an intricate funnel-shaped web whose strands have a tensile strength proportionately equal to the type of high-tension wire used in bridge builders, with nerve conduction velocity so fast that some researchers believe it almost borders on precognition, a spider sense.
Yeah, we got it. But hey, clever foreshadowing there with the bridge cable mentioned, setting up Peter using his webbing to suspend a bridge cable car in the final act. And the whole idea of his webbing tensile strength being like steel cables comes in the sound design of the webbing, which sounds like bending metal when Green Goblin breaks through later. One of these photos Peter takes of MJ shows back up, framed in Spider-Man 2. See, kids, in 2002, being a bit of a creeper was okay as long as she later declares her love for you at her friend's dad's funeral. At Oscorp, Norman Osborn, the perfectly cast Willem Dafoe, butts heads with Dr. Mendel Strom, who in the comics is the villain, Robot Master, also Gaunt.
We solved the Horizon Glide and the multi-G balance issues.
Back to formula. Back to formula.
Horizon Glide, multi-G balance issues, those are the same glider fixes Peter disables in the later battle, but Norman murders his chief glider engineer. Sadly ironic, since his eventual death is caused by a glider oversight.
Oh.
Whoopsie! Peter and Norman gain their powers simultaneously, Peter from a red and blue natural source, Norman from a green unnatural one, and Peter wakes up tuned and strangely tan. Actually, a few years ago, fans spotted how Raimi blurred the whole frame to show Peter's blurry lenses that he doesn't need because he now has better vision. But later, in Spider-Man 2, Raimi fixed that so that only the lenses themselves are out of focus when this happens. At school, Peter catches MJ, a stunt that Tobey Maguire performed practically, though not after 156 takes as myth may have you believe. It took Tobey several takes, but that number 156 came from VFX artist John Dykstra joking on the movie's commentary. He said, here we go, take 156. They didn't do 150 takes, they just did a lot of them. But people don't understand jokes, and bloggers need clicks. So here's how they did it. The slip and the throw were separate takes, but then, in the close-up of Toby, he did catch them from prop guys dropping them just above frame, but if you look closely, you can see adhesive on the bottom of the apple to keep it from rolling, and there are hidden magnets in the Jell-O and in the milk carton so that they would land together. Still, not an easy stunt. Now, famously, unlike Peter Parker's classic web shooter tech, Sam Raimi decided to make Peter's webbing in this movie emit organically from his wrists. And the first time it accidentally squirts out here, he's inadvertently doing the hand gesture, explaining why he has to do that gesture later on the roof to trigger this. And then two men in their late 20s fight in this high school. And Peter backbends to see MJ upside down briefly, a little foreshadowing of their future kissy. Watching this fight is Peter's chess club buddy, played by prolific background actor Jesse Hyman, whose many cameos went viral in 2011. Now, he's great, but our favorite extra is and always will be Bottom Line Bechtold. Peter tries to activate the web.
Up and away, Web! Shazam!
Referencing the catchphrases of DC superheroes, Superman and Billy Batson Shazam. It's a little weird how DC Comics exist in this universe.
You're not Superman, you know.
But hey, it was the early days before cinematic universes had borders. And the billboard that Peter smacks into is a car, making him a bug crushed on the windshield. One of Peter's suit designs is a black suit with a full chest red spider logo, similar to his symbiote black Spider-Man suit from the 80s comics with the white logo, which later became Venom. He notes needs more color, another reminder that his vibrant red and blue scheme is part of his identity. Spider-Man 3 be damned. And his final design includes visible note off to the side, glove will fit over bodysuit, showing how he built his suit with a glove flap and a nozzle connecting to his wrist pores, which years back fans spotted on the rooftop garden scene. Peter accidentally shatters his photo frame with himself, May, and Ben. Later, you can see that he replaced this frame and put the photo beside May's hospital bed. Norman reads a Daily Bugle article, reveals a bit of history if you look closely. Married only once to the artist Caroline Mulder, he was divorced after 10 years of what was said to have been a singularly strained and unhappy marriage. Now, actually, in the comics, Norman's wife is Emily Lyman. Also, in Norman's office hangs a portrait of a woman who I assume to be Mrs. Osborn, but with this divorce and his later words,
Your mother was beautiful too. They're all beautiful. Until they're snarling after your trust fund like a pack of ravening wolves.
yikes, maybe that's not a woman whose portrait he would hang up in his office. I think it's more likely this is Norman's mother, and she wears a black dress, and a little later, Harry calls out MJ's cultural appropriation.
Why didn't you wear the black dress? I wanted to impress my father. He loves black.
Yeah, he likes black dresses because the woman in the picture wears them. And later, MJ does change her wardrobe to try to impress Norman by wearing black. A great color for Thanksgiving.
So glad you look great.
For my dad's coming funeral. Uncle Ben drives a 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88, honey beige. This is actually Sam Raimi's car. He uses it in pretty much all of his movies, Evil Dead, Drag Me to Hell. And although it's not the same car, it is similar to the 1970 Oldsmobile Coupe that Stan Lee drives in Avengers Endgame, his final movie cameo. I feel like that had to be at least a bit intentional to Uncle Ben. And then Uncle Ben gives a generation of nerds the closing line for their awful high school valedictorian speeches.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
They actually resampled the late Cliff Robertson's audio from this moment in Into the Spider-Verse.
With great power comes great responsibility.
But hey, before I continue, thanks to Bang Energy for sponsoring this video. Every can of Bang is 16 ounces. It contains 300 milligrams of caffeine. It's sugar-free and it has 0 calories. Yet it tastes so good. There's over 20 different flavors to choose from. This flavor is Pina Colada. We're in those warmer summer months now. You might want a fruity drink, but not go anywhere that serves fruity drinks. I get it. That great tiki party can happen in your mouth with a can of Bang. And it gives you so much energy, so you can just do the limbo by yourself. Check out Bang on Instagram. You can get 25% off your order at bang-energy.com when you use the code NewRockstars25. There you can buy cans of Bang Energy, including their keto coffee flavor, their sweet tea flavor. You can also get clothing, fitness supplements, all kinds of stuff to be your best Bang self. Thanks again to Bang Energy for sponsoring this video. Get 25% off at bang-energy.com using the code NewRockstars25. Next, Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah! Cameos as Bonesaw McGraw, who, according to an Easter egg in Spider-Man Far From Home, also exists in the MCU. Octavia Spencer appears at the check-in desk, and Sam Raimi lead man Bruce Campbell cameos as the announcer. Bruce comes back as the theater usher in Spider-Man 2 and as a restaurant host in Spider-Man 3, which led to the great theory that Raimi was planning on revealing Bruce as an out-of-work performer, Quentin Beck Mysterio, in Spider-Man 4. That never happened. During the chase, the squad car has a license plate of 1927, could be an nod to the birth year of Spider-Man artist Steve Ditko, or Stan Lee's comic illustrator colleague John Buscema. Now, the NYC montage shows a newspaper article with redundant text. Don't they know we actually read these? Comedian Jim Norton cameos.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
And Lucy Lawless cameos.
Guy with 8 hands. Sounds hot.
But deleted from this montage was a sequence shown in an early teaser in which Spider-Man foils a heist by webbing a helicopter between the World Trade Center towers. But you can actually see exactly where that was removed from. The other side of the transition, zooming out from the towers, reflected in Spider-Man's mask eye. The towers also appear on the TV screen in J. Jonah Jameson's office. Speaking of whom, the perfectly cast J.K. Simmons does return as Jameson in the MCU in Spider-Man Far From Home. And if you think about it too hard, it is super fascinating that these universes are connected like this. And the next episode of Big Question will explain how this and that Bonesaw McGraw crossover and a whole bunch of other cool tie-ins could all be leading to an existing live-action Spider-Verse. So check out that episode. Jameson's editor Robbie says,
Problem is, we don't have a decent picture. Eddie's been on it for weeks. We can barely get a glimpse of it.
Eddie, a little nod to rival Bugle photographer Eddie Brock, revealed as Topher Grace in the third film. MJ works at the Moondance Diner, which you rent heads know is the workplace of composer Jonathan Larson and actor Jesse L. Martin. And then you friends heads might know as the former workplace of Monica Geller. MJ tells Peter,
Don't tell Harry.
And I won't tell Harry.
No, don't tell Harry.
I won't.
A recurring problem for Peter, keeping his best friend in the dark and driving a wedge in their friendship, which becomes Norman's final curse.
Don't tell Harry.
Peter says,
I was late for work and Dr. Connors fired me.
Kurt Connors shows up in the next film. Of course, in the comics, he's the villain, the Lizard, and the primary foe of the rebooted Amazing Spider-Man. Jameson reviews Peter's photos.
They're crap. Crap. Mega crap. I'll give you $200 for all of them.
Journalistically speaking, all of Peter's photos are posed and too clean. Newspapers typically run candid photos, clearly capturing a raw moment from a third-party observer. So yeah, these are crap. But you know, this is also Jameson. He has no ethics. He's just playing hardball.
So you take the pictures, I'll make up the headlines, okay? All right? That okay with you?
Yes, sir.
By verbally consenting to this editorial arrangement, Peter legally blocks himself from suing for libel.
That's slander.
It is not. I resent that. Slander is spoken. In print, it's libel.
And as our friends over at Film Theorist recently pointed out, when Peter steals that suit in the next film, he legally makes himself a criminal, technically proving Jameson's libelous headlines true. When Norman gets fired, Defoe adds this gross gesture of salivating, wiping away his goblin drool. He kind of does this later when May slaps him at Thanksgiving. When he is stung, his inner rabid beast comes out. Stan Lee cameos during Green Goblin's Times Square attack, because who wouldn't want to go see Macy Gray in 2002? Green Goblin turns the Oscorp board into skeletons. Also cameoing on his balcony is Nicholas Hammond, who played Peter Parker in the 70s series. And Goblin greets MJ.
Hello, my dear.
You can see Defoe's mouth under that mask. He's clearly saying something different. To me, it kind of looks like, somebody stop me. Peter catches MJ first and then webs them both up to the balcony, rather than webbing her up from the balcony to try to catch her like a yo-yo, because as we know from Gwen Stacy, that's how you snap a neck. Norman golems with his goblin identity in the mirror, and Defoe makes this awesome, smooth identity transition from glee to horror right as the camera revolves around him as he sees the newspaper, and then this sassy Daily Bugle article describes Goblin as some kind of green freak from another world, and calls out Oscorp's Unity Festival for celebrating the nebulous theme of unity. Norman attacks Jameson to try to get Spider-Man's photographer.
I don't know who he is. His stuff comes in the mail. You're lying!
Some have pointed out how Jameson is covering for Peter here, but really, he's covering his own ass because Peter is the one photographer who can supply quality Spider-Man photos that is bringing him business. So that's why he doesn't give them up. Also, kind of creepy here how in this scene, Goblin's previously yellow reflective eyepieces now have irises painted in, which makes them even more haunting to his later victims.
Those eyes.
Those horrible yellow eyes.
And I love this. The photo that the Bugle uses to report the attack is a younger, handsomer file photo of Jameson. Of course it is. Peter saves MJ. They share their iconic inverted kiss. And MJ says,
I better run, Tiger.
Tiger is MJ's nickname for Peter in the comics, and it gets called back in the final words of the next movie.
Go get him, Tiger.
After the burning building attack, the Thanksgiving party checks in on Peter's room.
Bit of a slob, isn't he?
All brilliant men are.
On the floor is a beaver sweatshirt for Camp Tamaqua, Sam Raimi's camp when he was a kid. And Norman judging Peter's messy room could be a clue for him, pointing to Peter's secret double life, something Norman would understand, especially since his inner goblin is always making a mess.
The jungle out there. I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these cranberries.
Just like Norman's not so subtle "work was murder" line. Peter's also making a nod to how he had to beat up Goblin to get there when Goblin was disguised as an old lady in that fire. And Harry foreshadows his future.
Right, if I'm lucky, I'll become half of what he is.
And later gets a father-son passing the torch moment, which leads to this insane part.
Wake up, little spider.
Yeah! But this jump scare has yet another reason to haunt your dreams because years ago, some fans spotted another second goblin hiding behind him. Ugh. Now it's possibly foreshadowing Harry following his father, stepping out from his father's shadow to take on the goblin mantle himself. But also, 5 satellite dishes plus Goblin is a sinister and I'm just reaching. Goblin takes MJ to the Brooklyn Bridge, inspired by the eventful Night Gwen Stacy Died comic, in which Green Goblin dangled Gwen over the bridge, and then he later died via his own glider, as he does in this movie. The cable slips out of Peter's hand, leaving a streak of red dye from his gloves, and then New York steps up.
You mess with Spider, you mess with New York. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
And that first guy is actually actor Michael Edward Thomas, who returns in the next movie.
We think there's a kid stuck on the second floor.
Goblin throws a grenade at Peter's face, the same move that Peter will later use on Norman's son in Spider-Man 3. And Peter gets the upper hand, but Norman's final weapon is revealing his identity.
Mr. Osborn.
And I just love that shot composition with the twisted branch framing his eye. Don't look at me! But of course, his confession is a trick to stall Peter while the glider gets into position, but yeah, it doesn't work.
Oh.
Here, or when Spider-Man Homecoming does this.
Oh.
Really, Peter learns the value of anonymity, how symbols are more powerful than any man. But with great power comes great, you know. And the cost of this power is human connection.
Don't tell Harry.
Norman dooms Peter to a life of solitude. No Harry, no MJ even, no one his enemies can target. And that power of symbols returns in the final imagery of this film. As I said before, the color palette is key. Peter's red and blue scheme is this city spider's natural camouflage in an environment filled with flashing emergency lights. But let's be honest, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, these guys designed the character with flashy patriotic colors to catch the eye and sell more comics. And in a film that had to adjust after America's darkest moment, a movie that celebrates the people of New York, you cannot deny the symbolism of seeing this hero framed with the matching colors that draped the city of New York in this time. A reminder that symbols can cloak us in great power, but that is a precarious path that requires thoughtful responsibility. New Rockstars hosts weekly watch-alongs of these classic films on our Discord server. You can join that by becoming a patron at patreon.com/newrockstars. Follow me on Instagram, follow New Rockstars, and subscribe for breakdowns of everything you love. And
Godspeed, Spider-Man.